Tommy back.
Yeah, I am. This is some real El Chapo looking shit right here. Time for a little lesson in flight.
The first look at Season 5, you can feel it immediately, not just in what is shown, but in what is missing. The silence feels heavier, the tension feels colder, and most importantly, Kanan himself no longer feels like the same person we've been watching all this time. Because after everything that happened, after that gunshot, after that moment where a son stood face to face with his own mother and pulled the trigger, there is no going back. Season 5 is not just continuing the story, it is finishing it. And from the very first moments of the trailer, it becomes clear that this final chapter is not about who Kanan might become someday. It's about the moment he finally becomes him. The first look doesn't rush, it lingers. It allows the weight of Season 4's ending to settle in, reminding us that the consequences of that single moment didn't just disappear. They stayed. They followed Kanan. They changed him. Because when someone crosses a line like that, especially someone as young as Kanan, the damage doesn't just exist around them. It exists inside them. And what the trailer shows us more than anything else is that Kanan is now carrying something permanent, something heavy, something that is shaping every decision he makes moving forward. He's quieter, more focused, less reactive, but somehow more dangerous. And that's what makes this version of Kanan so important. Because this is the version that's no longer reacting to the world. This is the version that's starting to control it. At the same time, the world around him hasn't become any safer. In fact, it's becoming more unstable than ever. The power structure that once felt solid is now fractured. The people Kanan once relied on are no longer predictable. And the trust that used to exist inside the Thomas family has been completely broken. You can feel it in the distance between characters. You can feel it in the hesitation. Everyone is moving carefully now, not because they want to, but because they have to. Because nobody knows who they can trust anymore. And when trust disappears, fear takes its place. What makes this trailer so effective is how it focuses on that emotional fallout rather than just action. It shows us that Season 5 isn't just about external threats, it's about internal transformation. Kanan is no longer standing on the outside, trying to prove himself. He's stepping into something bigger, something darker. And the way people look at him now reflects that change. They're no longer seeing a kid, they're seeing someone who has done something irreversible, someone who has survived something that most people never could. And that shift doesn't just affect Kanan, it affects everyone connected to him. Because when one person changes this dramatically, it forces everyone else to respond. Some people will try to guide him, some will try to control him, and some will see him as a threat that needs to be stopped before it's too late. But what makes this situation so dangerous is that Kanan is no longer easily influenced. He's no longer searching for approval. He's no longer hesitating in the same way. He's thinking differently now, moving differently, becoming someone who understands what power really means, and more importantly, what it costs. The trailer also makes it clear that Season 5 will not be slowing down. This is the final chapter, and everything that has been building since the very beginning is now coming together. Every lesson, every betrayal, every loss, all of it has been shaping Kanan into the person he was always meant to become. And now, for the first time, we're seeing that process reach its final stage. Not in a sudden moment, but in a gradual transformation that feels earned. That feels real. That feels inevitable, because raising Kanan has never just been about crime. It's been about identity, about how someone becomes who they are. And Season 5 is where that question finally gets answered. Not with uncertainty, not with hesitation. And the most chilling part of all is that Kanan himself seems to understand exactly what's happening to him. He's no longer confused. He's no longer lost. He's stepping forward with purpose. And when someone like Kanan finds purpose after everything he's been through, that's when he becomes truly dangerous. Because this isn't the beginning of his story anymore. This is the moment he becomes the version of Kanan the world will never forget. What makes the first look at Season 5 even more unsettling is the feeling that Kanan is no longer being guided by anyone. For the longest time, his journey was shaped by forces around him. His mother's influence defined his understanding of power. Her decisions, her secrets, and her protection created both his strength and his confusion. But now, that influence feels different. Whether Rak is still physically present or not, the control she once had over Kanan is gone. And what replaces that control is something far more unpredictable: independence. Because for the first time, Kanan isn't being told who to be. He's deciding that for himself. And that shift changes everything. You can see it in the way he carries himself. There's less hesitation, less emotional reaction. He's no longer acting out of pure anger or pain. Instead, there's calculation, there's patience, and that patience is what makes him more dangerous than ever before, because emotional decisions can be understood. They can be anticipated, but calculated decisions come from a place that is much harder to read, a place where survival becomes the only priority. The trailer makes it clear that Kanan is stepping deeper into the world that once surrounded him from a distance. Before, he was always close to it, watching it, learning from it, but never fully controlling it. Now, that distance is gone. He's no longer standing beside power. He's stepping directly into it. And that transition isn't loud. It isn't announced. It happens quietly, subtly, which makes it even more powerful. At the same time, the absence of certainty surrounding Rak's fate continues to cast a shadow over everything, because regardless of whether she survived that final moment or not, her presence still defines the emotional core of the story. She was never just a leader, she was the foundation that held everything together, and when a foundation cracks, everything built on top of it becomes unstable. Marvin and Lulu are now existing in a reality where that stability no longer exists. Their loyalty was always tied to Rak. Even when they disagreed with her, even when trust was broken, she was still the center. But now they're being forced to operate in a world where that center may be gone forever. And that creates uncertainty. It creates vulnerability, because without a clear leader, everyone begins to move based on their own instincts, their own fears, their own survival. And survival changes people. Lulu, in particular, has been fighting his own internal battle for a long time. His desire to escape the life that defined him was always at war with the reality that he could never fully leave it behind. And now, with everything collapsing around him, that conflict becomes even more intense, because leaving isn't just about walking away. It's about accepting what happens to the people you leave behind, and that's a decision that carries consequences no matter which path he chooses. Marvin, on the other hand, has been trying to rebuild himself, trying to prove that he can be more than the violence that once defined him. But the world they live in doesn't easily allow that kind of transformation. It pulls people back in. It tests them. It forces them to confront parts of themselves they were hoping to leave behind. And with the power structure shifting, Marvin may be forced to become someone he was trying so hard not to be anymore. But what makes all of this even more intense is how it connects back to Kanan, because while everyone else is struggling to figure out where they stand, Kanan seems to be moving forward with clarity, not because he has all the answers, but because he's no longer waiting for permission. He's no longer looking for someone else to show him the way. He's creating his own path now, one decision at a time. And the people around him can see it. They can see that he's no longer the kid they once knew. They can see that something inside him has hardened. And they can see that whatever comes next, Kanan is not going to stop. Because this is no longer about revenge. This is no longer about proving himself. This is about becoming something permanent, something powerful, something inevitable. And Season 5 is where that transformation reaches the point of no return. But perhaps the most important and most dangerous development revealed in the first look isn't just Kanan's transformation. It's the arrival of someone who represents the future of everything. Someone whose presence alone signals that the story is entering its most critical phase. Breeze. For years, Breeze has existed more as a legend than a person, a name spoken with weight, a figure whose influence shaped the original Power story long before we ever saw Raising Kanan begin. And now, in Season 5, that legend is finally becoming real. And what makes his arrival so significant isn't just who he is, it's what he represents for Kanan's future. Because Breeze isn't just another player in the game, he's the next evolution of it. The first look makes it clear that Breeze's presence immediately changes the atmosphere. There's a sense that he understands the world in a way others don't. He's calm, observant, patient. He doesn't need to demand respect. He naturally commands it. And that kind of presence is rare. especially in a world where power is usually taken by force rather than earned through quiet control. What makes Breeze different is that he sees potential, he sees opportunity, and more importantly, he sees Kanan. Because when Breeze looks at Kanan, he isn't just seeing a kid trying to survive. He's seeing someone who has already crossed lines, someone who understands loss, someone who has experienced betrayal, someone who has been forced to grow up faster than anyone ever should. And those experiences are exactly what shape people into leaders in this world. The trailer subtly suggests that Breeze's role will not just be as an ally or an enemy, but as something far more influential: a guide, a mentor. Someone who will help refine the version of Kanan that is now emerging, not by protecting him, but by exposing him to the realities of power in its purest form. Because power, in this world, isn't just about strength, it's about control. It's about knowing when to act and when to wait. It's about understanding people, understanding fear, and understanding how to use both. And Breeze understands all of it, which means Kanan is about to learn from someone who represents the very thing he is slowly becoming. But that relationship also carries danger, because mentorship in this world is never just about guidance. It's about shaping. It's about influence. And once someone begins learning from a figure like Breeze, there's no separating who they were from who they're becoming. This is where raising Kanan begins to connect directly to the larger power universe, in a way that feels undeniable. Because we already know the kind of man Kanan eventually becomes. We know the kind of reputation he builds, the kind of fear he commands, and seeing Breeze enter his life now shows us exactly where that path truly begins. Not with a moment of victory, but with a moment of alignment. Because Kanan is no longer searching for direction. Direction is finding him. And what makes that so unsettling is that Kanan doesn't seem afraid of it. He doesn't resist it. He doesn't question. At the same time, while Breeze's arrival opens the door to Kanan's future, it also signals the collapse of the past, because Season 5 isn't just introducing new power, it's showing the consequences of everything that came before. Every decision, every betrayal, every moment where loyalty was tested and broken. The first look makes it clear that nobody escapes the weight of what has happened. Not emotionally, not psychologically, and definitely not physically. The Thomas family, once united by Rack's vision and authority, now feels like it's existing in pieces. Not completely destroyed, but no longer whole. And what makes that so painful is that this fracture didn't happen overnight. It was slow, gradual, built over years of mistrust, secrets, and survival. Rack always believed she could control everything, control the streets, control her enemies, control her family. But what Season 5 shows us is that control was always temporary, because eventually everyone reaches a point where they stop following and start choosing for themselves. And Kanan was always the one person she could never fully control. Now, that reality is unavoidable, because the version of Kanan we see in the first look isn't standing behind anyone anymore. He's standing on his own. And that independence creates a ripple effect. The people who once protected him are now forced to see him differently, not as someone who needs guidance, but as someone who is capable of making decisions that affect everyone around him. And that realization creates tension, because independence in this world doesn't just create opportunity, it creates conflict. Jukebox's journey, in particular, feels like it's reaching a critical emotional breaking point. Her transformation has always been one of the most heartbreaking aspects of raising Kanan. She started as someone full of vulnerability, full of emotion, full of hope for something different. But loss has a way of reshaping people. And the first look suggests that. Jukebox is continuing to build emotional walls around herself, not because she wants to, but because she feels like she has to, because trusting people in this world comes with consequences, and those consequences have already taken so much from her. What makes her evolution so important is that it mirrors Kanan's in many ways, but with a different emotional outcome. Where Kanan is becoming colder and more controlled, Jukebox is becoming more distant and more guarded. Both are adapting, both are surviving, but both are also losing parts of themselves in the process. And that's what makes this final season feel so heavy. Because this isn't just about who rises to power, it's about what they lose to get there. The first look also hints that external threats are continuing to close in. The streets are shifting, new players are watching. Old enemies haven't forgotten anything, and when weakness is even suspected, it creates opportunity for someone else to take control. That's the nature of this world. Power never stays empty for long. If someone falls, someone else rises. And now, everyone is watching to see what Kanan will do next. Will he hesitate? Will he struggle? Or will he fully embrace the version of himself that is now emerging? Because the truth is, Season 5 isn't just testing Kanan's strength, it's testing his identity. It's forcing him to confront the reality that power comes with isolation, that leadership comes with sacrifice, that becoming someone feared often means leaving behind the person you used to be. And based on everything the trailer shows us, Kanan understands that now. He understands that there is no returning to innocence, no returning to who he was before, only moving forward, only becoming stronger, only becoming harder, only becoming the version of himself that this world was always creating. And as the past continues to fall apart around him, Kanan isn't running from it. He's walking directly through it. And when you step back and really look at everything the first look is showing us, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Season 5 isn't just the continuation of raising Kanan. It's the moment where the story finally catches up to destiny. Because from the very beginning, we were never just watching a kid trying to survive. We were watching the creation of someone who would eventually become one of the most dangerous and unforgettable figures in the entire Power universe. And now, that creation is almost complete. The trailer makes it clear that this final chapter will not leave questions unanswered. This isn't a story that's fading away quietly. It's a story that's reaching its final form. Every relationship is being tested one last time. Every character is being forced to confront who they truly are when everything they once relied on is no longer there. And most importantly, Kanan himself is standing at the center of it all, no longer reacting to the chaos, but becoming the cause of it. Because power has changed him, loss has changed him, betrayal has changed him. But more than anything, acceptance has changed him. He's no longer fighting the reality of who he is. He's embracing it. And that acceptance is what makes this version of Kanan so dangerous. Because hesitation is gone. Doubt is fading. The emotional conflict that once defined him is being replaced by something colder, something clearer, something permanent. He's no longer asking himself whether he belongs in this world. He knows he does. And when someone reaches that level of certainty, there's nothing left to hold them back.